Start the clock.
Good afternoon. At the tone, time will be
Real time.
I'm glad you came. How are you? All right, let's meet our panel. Hey, Jack. All right, here they are. He's on Mitt Romney's Healthcare Advisory Board and writes the Apothecary blog for Forbes.com. Avik Roy, thank you for joining us. She anchors BBC World News America. Great show. Katty Kay is back with us, and our returning champion for 20 years. He's represented Georgia's 1st District in the U.S. House of Representatives, my friend, Congressman Jack Kingston. Okay. So, before we get to the fun stuff about Congressman Aiken, let's eat our vegetables first and talk about the issues that people really care about, because for those folks who probably have not been following the race until recently, after Ryan was picked, is sort of when it starts, they kind of woke up to this, wow, they're talking about Medicare. I didn't know that was an issue. And I've been watching the ads from both of them and the news coverage, and they both are claiming that the other guy is robbing Medicare, and I'm saving it. So let's just start with that. Who's robbing it and who's saving it? You're an expert on this. This is your field. I'll give you the first shot. Who's robbing it? Who's saving it?
Yeah, so Obamacare spends over the next 10 years $1.9 trillion to cover the uninsured. That $1.9 trillion is funded by $1.2 trillion in tax increases and $700 billion in Medicare cuts. That's how it's deficit neutral.
Like right on your tax form?
Well, it depends. Some of them are indirect taxes, some of them are direct taxes.
I knew there was something behind that, more than just that. Okay. But when I hear the Democrats talk about it, now both sides agree on this figure of, I think, $716 billion that is coming out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare.
Yeah, that's a CBO number.
Okay.
Congressional budget.
Now, what the Democrats say is, yeah, this is money that was going to go to the insurance companies, the drug companies, the hospitals, you know, those greedy pigs at the trough. And this is the best place to take the money. It's not taking a dime from people's actual care. So it seems like, I mean, this is the argument I've been hearing from the left. Tell me why that's wrong.
It's not true because, go ahead.
Well, what I say, if you take the money out of hospital reimbursement or skilled nursing home reimbursement or anybody who's a provider, what's going to happen is they're going to cut back on their services because there's not much profit in it, and seniors are having trouble finding doctors who will even use Medicare these days or who will provide Medicare because the reimbursement level is so low.
But this is Medicare Advantage. I mean, this is really what we're talking about.
It's the whole program.
Okay, but that was a Republican idea.
It was meant to be more efficient.
Right, and actually it cost more. I mean, that's what I read. Those were the facts, that it actually cost more.
There's a debate about that.
Because they don't, a lot of the overhead costs of a bureaucracy is not counted against the bureaucracy. Whereas if you have Medicare Advantage, and everybody downstream is counted as part of the formula for the cost. But I want to point out that in terms of Medicare Advantage, on the way they rate Medicare, it scores highest in 8 out of 11 different categories in terms of metrics, and something like 85% of the people who do it are extremely happy with it. So it has been a good program.
Why is the AMA for Obamacare? If this is going to hurt doctors, why are they for Obamacare? Why did they come out and
The AMA doesn't represent the whole physician community. The AMA represents a tiny minority of all physicians, and it tends to be a Washington-centric group that AMA gets actually a lot of royalties from the existing system, and that's one thing they want to preserve. So they have a lot of incentive to make sure that their pot of money...
the doctor's own lobby doesn't represent them?
It's actually about...
It's a very bad lobby.
They should get rid of that lobby.
It's about
very
15 or 20% of all physicians, and most of those physicians who are in the AMA are academics. But what you're saying is absolutely right. They do get a royalty on the medical forms or some sort of a book that, as long as it... But, you know, Bill, what's great about this whole thing, in my opinion, is it's a real issue. And we really do need to put Medicare on the table to talk about it. And you just mentioned, and I overheard you, the war. I think we need to be discussing more about the war. To me, these are the big issues that we've got to talk about: Medicare, the war, the budget in general. You know, all this
These
is...
are big issues, but they get hijacked by a political campaign where both sides fall for scaremongering immediately. Republicans are as guilty as Democrats about saying to seniors, oh my God, if the other side is elected, you are going to be so much worse off. So although there is a real discussion to be had, and Avik has been part of that discussion, in the political arena, what we're having is the same kind of rubbish, frankly, and the American public deserves more. They are not getting a real discussion. They're just getting negative ads.
You know,
About
it's
a
like they do in the UN.
Let me ask about some other issues. We're going to talk about this all night, which is welfare. Show the clip. Please do. This is the Romney ad about Obama and welfare.
In 1996, President Clinton and a bipartisan Congress helped end welfare as we know it by requiring work for welfare. But on July 12th, President Obama quietly announced a plan to gut welfare reform by dropping work requirements. Under Obama's plan, you wouldn't have to work and wouldn't have to train for a job. They just send you your welfare check.
They just send you the check. You know, now this has been denounced by not just every independent organization, saying that, you know, usually there's some thread of truth, even in a bullshit ad, but we couldn't even find the thread. Even Wolf Blitzer, who never gets involved with the truth, the other day called somebody, said, no, that's actually not true. No, because, I mean, the facts are the governors requested this. Okay, this was something that they wanted to give power back to the states. They gave him waivers about the welfare requirements. And you had to require 20% more work, not less. So is this new, where you don't have any thread back to the truth, where you can, because Mitt Romney keeps saying it, even though he's been caught
Here's what
in a
the
lie.
Sebelius announcement in July said, is that you don't have to have...
Sebelius, the...
Yeah, the Secretary of Health and Human Services that
Okay.
administers the welfare.
There you go.
It says it's the Section 402, and what she said is you could come up with something. I think the terminology was creative alternative or something besides work. And the problem is we don't know what the heck she's talking about, and I suspect she doesn't know what she's talking about either.
But isn't this giving back to the states? Isn't that what Republicans love when things go back to the states? You can see why Obama gets discouraged.
It's a little
Even when he
different,
does
though,
something you
because
love, you hate him.
The 1996 welfare reform law was very specific and very carefully drafted to give states flexibility, but also make sure that that work requirement had teeth. And what's interesting about what Sebelius did was, even though the memorandum doesn't really make that many changes, it's that she's asserting the authority that she can gut the work requirement. And that means that a future administration, or maybe even the Obama administration a second term, could go much further in claiming that they have the legal authority to undermine the work requirement. And that's what a lot of people have been concerned about. Mickey Kaus, who's a liberal columnist for the Daily Caller, writes a lot about welfare reform, is one of the first people to raise the alarms about it.
Does kind of imply that Obama's walking through the ghetto, handing out shoeboxes full of cash to his black friends. It does. It kind of is this.
No comment.
President Obama, when he was an Illinois state senator, actually spoke out against the welfare reform law of 96 because he was opposed to the work requirement. 3 members of the Clinton administration
Well, it has
resigned.
thrown a lot more people into poverty. It didn't actually work.
It lifted a lot of people out of poverty.
What's the one thing,
But,
Congressman, what's
Romney
the
can't
most
say
important
something.
thing that Mitt Romney has to do at the convention? He has to persuade Americans that he is more accessible, more human, he's got to come across as likable. This is a personal pitch he has to make over the course of the next week. If this is the kind of personal pitch he makes, it's not going to increase his likability ratings amongst swing voters who are going to look at this and think, well, maybe it was meant to be funny, but actually it didn't sound very funny to me. It sounded kind of mean.
No, you know
And I
what?
think that's the problem with him.
He's been running for president for 5 years.
He's been running for
I don't
president for a lot
think
longer.
it's about people getting to know him. It's about whether he can fix the economy, whether
He
his
can
agenda...
do that during the debates and in his policy speeches, but the convention is the one time people are going to think, do I warm to this guy or not? I don't think after those comments today, he may have meant them as a joke, but it didn't come across
he's had
as particularly...
5 years
people
to
are not
bring
gonna
out
be
the
talking
birther
about this in
thing. If this
Well, the failed policies, you know, I don't want to get on the subject too long, but I would say, first of all, the policy, the big one, was the stimulus. Every economist who's neutral says it actually worked. We would have had a depression. You know, this is the... Come on.
No.
Oh, come on.
No.
Really?
No,
The
allow him to
stimulus
be
didn't
funny.
work? I mean...
No.
I just thought it was...
No, there's an ideal... They're the
I got it. Yeah.
They're the key
You're with me.
has a multiplier effect, and there are the non-Keynesians who don't believe that. And that was a debate that was vigorously litigated in 2009.
So what if we did not have the stimulus? Let's play the parallel universe game. We didn't have the stimulus.
Right.
Where are we now?
We'd probably
We're in
be
a better
off.
place?
Yeah.
Really?
We'd be paying less interest on the debt. Our fiscal situation would be a lot better.
The debt.
So in the
like
crisis
that would make a difference in people's lives.
All this money went into non-shovel-ready products. You know, there were all these projects that were supposedly
No,
going to
actually,
create jobs.
a lot of
They
it
didn't.
went to the states. They
We
kept
spent-
cops,
Yeah, the
firefighters, teachers working.
The unemployment rate would have been higher.
So according to the Democratic model,
these are
the
like-
amount of money spent on the stimulus
no.
cost $150,000 per job. Okay, so we could have spent that money a lot more efficiently in the
All right,
private.
you know what he said was, I used the wrong word when I said legitimate rape. What I meant was forcible, because that's the word Paul Ryan used. Nobody ever refuted the other part, the part about the magical spermicide. that killed-
Everyone has talked about him being a jackass and talked about how stupid that is.
Not that specific part of it.
They have, absolutely.
Really?
No, they have. Because
I
what
must
he
have
did,
missed that.
I mean, it wasn't just about abortion. He got in the medical world. He got into women can't get pregnant if they don't want to. Whatever. I mean, that's ridiculous. Everybody knows that. But I think the universal denouncement.
Yes, wait a second. This is the interesting part.
I don't know.
Well, it'll be interesting when Mike Huckabee speaks at the
Paul
convention
Ryan-
to see how he's received, because he's actually defended the congressman. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to stand up there on Monday night. He's going to give his speech, and it'll be interesting to see how the.
But wait a second. Paul Ryan, he's the guy who introduced that bill, who said, you know, we have to change the language to include the words forcible rape, to differentiate just from whatever regular rape is.
Well, no, there's a difference
wait
in
a second.
statutory rape.
He said, okay, but he's the one who said we have to put that language in, forcible rape, not just rape.
Are you suggesting
And yesterday he
forcible
said,
rape and rape are
rape is rape. There is no splitting hairs.
The FBI for 30 years has made the distinction between forcible rape and statutory rape. So if a 19-year-old has consensual sex with a 17-year-old, that's not considered forcible rape. That's considered statutory
Nor should it
rape.
be.
No, should.
You know, no, and we can say that we should make that distinction,
But I don't think that wasn't the
Okay,
distinction.
if you want to, whenever you attack the war, people on the right will say, you know, you need to support the troops.
Right.
To me, supporting the troops would be working tirelessly to get them out of this pointless stalemate.
Right.
That would
Let
be
me tell you-
supporting them.
let me tell you-
So that this doesn't appear next year with...
was honorable, because that's
What's
why
that?
they're fighting and that's why they're sacrificing.
I'm
themselves.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Supporting the troops means believing that their mission was honorable and knowing.
What if it's not?
But it is honorable. They're trying to save that country from complete chaos. Let's say we do pull out.
But it's impossible.
Let's say we do pull out.
Most of them are getting
thousands of Afghans died.
You know how most of them are.
Afghans.
You know how most of them are getting killed now? Shot by the Afghans they're training.
Right.
That's how good the system is
Terrorists.
working.
You know,
right?
Bill,
Terrorists.
I just
oh,
went.
Jesus Christ.
think-
Okay. Let's end on that bipartisan note. Thank you very much. Thank you, panel. But it's time for. Okay, we're back here on Overtime, and I'm going to give you guys the first shot to respond to the editorial, because I'm sure you were sitting there stewing as I was saying that the Republican Party is the party of fantasy. But your rebuttal?
It's a speech I've heard Republicans give about Democrats my whole life. So, you know, that's the debate we have, right? Which side is being fiscally fantastic?
I know, but one side more has the facts on their side. I mean, if you don't believe in global warming, then you're going against every scientist in the world.
Except that temperatures haven't increased for the last 10 years.
That's completely wrong.
It is-
See what I
it is
mean about
actual
facts?
scientific
They
fact.
have complete. It's been the hottest year ever. Like 8 out of the last 10 years are the hottest years ever. Where are you getting this? Where are you getting this?
It's the data.
Seriously, it's in the paper every day. I'm not trying to make funny. I'm just saying we must not be reading the same language.
You know,
You don't really think global warming is happening and man-made?
No, I don't.
That there's any climate change.
okay.
But you do it. But do you
So
concede
here's the
that
question.
90-something percent of scientists do think that?
There's a lot of politicization of the climate science.
Yeah.
No, there isn't.
There
Bill,
absolutely is.
there's.
I,
You know,
I hear this all the time. The
You have
scientists
this-
are paid off. That's why scientists
I'm
are
not saying
buying
they're paid off.
mansions and wearing
I'm saying
fur
there's a lot of
coats.
politicization of the
It's like it's.
Talk to my old
You
professor
know-
at MIT, Richard Linson. He's one of the people who audits this data pretty considerably, and he makes a persuasive case that it's not
I
persuasive.
just keep looking for the strings that are moving
No,
around.
no, no. You know what you really need to do, I think,
Come on.
is is if you could get both sides of this to agree, well, okay, who are the references that we're going to say? Who are the gold standards? Instead of arguing what those...
The gold standards are the climatologists, the scientists, and they're all on the same side. And by the way, 20 years ago, your party did not deny it was happening. That wasn't the position of the Republican Party in the Bob Dole era. It was cap and trade, which is now the Democrat position. What happened? How did we go from it's happening to now it's not happening at all?
Well, there's a couple of different points, right? There's temperature variability, and what's causing that, right? So is it being caused by man? We don't know. It might be being caused by man. And then there's the question of if it is being caused by man, if it's true that computer models by climate scientists can predict to the second decimal point in 2053 that temperatures will increase by 0.5 centigrade.
No, that's not
what can we do about that? What are are we going to spend $100 billion?
You would say that there is, you suggested that there was variability. So you do say that there is climate change. You might not say that there's global warming, but you do say that there is climate change happening.
Global temperatures go up, they go down. There's accuracy issues.
We're getting more extreme. We're getting, scientists will go to the Arctic and see this.
Scientific consensus, though. I mean, we're only humans. We will never have a perfect answer because there will be no God who comes down and says, this is the answer. So we can only go by consensus, which means, like 100 years ago, everyone didn't believe in Darwin's theory. And then there was an overwhelming consensus.
We bled people because we thought
so
that
if we have over 90% of the people who are trained in the field, so it's 90% of the, like, 0.001% of the people who are knowledgeable. Isn't that overwhelming?
At the macro level. So, if we really believe that industrialization is the cause of global warming, then what you're really saying is Africa can't become part of the developed world. You're saying that India shouldn't be a developed country because if Africa develops, India develops, that's what environmentalists are doing. They're saying
I'm not following this argument.
Countries can't become part of the developed world because if they do, they're going to pollute more. They're going to consume more fossil fuels. They're going to use more energy. They're going to do all the things that the environmentalists oppose. So what we're really saying is we're consigning all of them to poverty. We're not going to allow them to become prosperous countries.
But wait, this is a false argument. Like, if we don't use fossil fuels, you're consigned to poverty. That's ridiculous.
Do you think solar panels are going to fuel the world energy demand?
They will someday, of course.
No way.
Why?
They won't lift
It's like saying 100 years ago, do you think cars are going to replace horses? How ridiculous. Of course they are.
Until solar energy is magical unicorns and can power the world's energy
It's not magic. Well, first of all, it's happening in other countries around the world. China is doing it already. Of course, India is doing it already.
It's not efficient. That's why Solyndra went bankrupt.
Nothing is efficient
it's
at
the most-
first. All right. We didn't get to one question, but it was fun. Thank you, folks. Thank you. See you.
Real Time with Bill Maher. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.